Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 132 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlight, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a few exhibit animals. As I mentioned, we're going through a bit of a revolution, so we've got a lot of new species exhibit animals, which I'm really excited to get stuck into. A really cool little bunch. And then we've got a couple cool birds and interesting mammals you see on the thumbnail that we're going to be talking about. So first up, we've got, this mod was done by Leaf. We have got here the South Pacific banana snail. So let's have a look on the camera. Look at this cool little guy. Let's find one. There we are. It's perfect. Here we are. So this is the South Pacific banana slug. I'll be talking more about banana slugs in general with this one, but we'll get started. So banana slugs, they're a genus of a North American slugs, and they get the name the banana slug because they're quite yellow, but they can be greenish, brown, or even tan, or even white sometimes. And there's about 5 different species that range from up about southern Alaska down to the Pacific coast, or the west coast. Yeah, the west coast down into like California. And the South Pacific one, the Southern Pacific banana slug, lives in places like Santa Barbara, which is quite interesting as well. So you can see, often bright yellow, as I mentioned here, and some species do sometimes have dark spots or even can be black, but they can also change their color based on food consumption and light exposure and moisture levels, so that's interesting as well. And the Pacific banana slug is actually the second largest species of terrestrial slug in the world, not the species. They get up to about 25 centimeters, or about 9.8 inches long, and weigh about 115 grams, or about 4 ounces, with the largest slug species living in Europe and being about 37 meters in length, so just a little bit longer. And typically they have a lifespan of about 1 to 7 years. And very similar to other types of slugs and gastropods, they have a radula, which is almost like a tongue that's covered in lots and lots of little teeth, or it's like a ribbon, like an anatomy structure with lots of little teeth that allow them to feed, and they can move about 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters a minute, so very interesting as well. And they use these 2 pairs of tentacles to, like the eye stalks, quote unquote, to look at the environment. So these taller ones are the eye stalks that they use to kind of see and look or detect light or movement, and the lower ones here are used to detect chemicals, so they can find things to eat, which is interesting as well. And when they get attacked, they can retract them, like slugs do. And those have a single lung on their right side that opens externally through a pterodome, which is kind of like a lung that allows gas exchange. It's almost like just having a big nostril on their side. And it can be a big issue for dehydrating, is a big issue for these guys. So they have like a mucus coating over them that allows them to keep moist and breathe as well. And also more common typically on cooler days and moister days. And also they actually have pheromones as well that attract other slugs during mating. And they're simultaneous hermaphrodites. So basically they're both male and female at the same time, and they reproduce by exchanging sperm with the male. So pretty much that the males will kind of fence, and some species of fence, and then the loser will have to carry the babies. But this time they kind of do it simultaneously. So they produce up to about 75 translucent eggs, which are laid on a log or in leaves, and they mate and lay eggs throughout the year, but the adult do not really provide much care for the eggs other than finding a suitable spot and then pretty much abandon them. So as I mentioned, in terms of their habitat and their range, some species, the southeastern parts like Santa Cruz and Santa Barbara, there are several disjointed populations that go from San Diego around California, and some northern parts can be found like southeastern Alaska. And small isolated patients would be like Canadian Rockies, the Sierra Nevada, Yosemite, and this is believed to be because of relic range during the Ice Age. They probably were a little bit more common during the Ice Age, because there was a lot more connected habitat. But yeah, really interesting to show how they lived around. And in terms of ecology, these guys are detritivores, or decomposers, so they feed on animal droppings, dead plant material, and moss, and then recycle them into soil. But are quite generalist, and will have a preference for mushrooms. And then they'll consume various plant matter and things like that. They actually can act as agents of seed dispersal, and they help certain seeds germinate, so they're great for spreading plants around the forest. And they also excrete a nitrogen-rich fertilizer, which helps as well. And by eating dead matter, they actually contribute to the nutrient cycle, so they're able to recycle stuff, which is quite cool. And sometimes certain species like raccoons, garter snakes, ducks, geese, and salamanders will eat their slugs. But when that happens, they kind of roll up, they bind to their slime. They roll the slugs in soil to bind to slime. And then the juvenile banana slugs can be eaten by moles and shrews. However, the slime has a numbing effect when predators attempt to consume them, affecting whatever moist surfaces they touch, which is interesting as well. And we'll talk about that slime. So they actually secrete chemicals from their mucus that can actually numb the tongues of predators, and its mucus can absorb up to 100 times its volume in water, and it's technically not liquid nor solid, it's like a crystalline substance. It's almost very much similar to like a human mucus as well, so that's quite interesting, and it's able to pretty much keep them keep them nice and warm, not warm, nice and damp so they can breathe, but also, as I mentioned, it's got that numbing agent, so it defends them against predators. Which is very interesting as well. It also protects from like pathogens and predators, as I mentioned with the slime. The chemical cues from that slime attracts males, so it's very important for them to be nice and almost like wet because they need that mucus for a lot of reasons. But as I mentioned, they are hermaphroditic, so they have both male and female reproductive organs, and they either can mate with other slugs or even fertilize themselves, which is interesting. And they use pheromones to kind of detect each other and attract them. And then their courtship can be quite robust, and in certain species can be allophilization, which is during the mating ritual they'll like dance each other and like nip and tail at each other. And notice that after copulation they can actually chew each other for as long as 45 minutes, and then they lay off and lay 30 to 50 eggs in a small crevice, and then they'll hatch within a month or two. And over several months those babies will grow into an adult. So yeah, really, really cool little slug. Definitely a little cutie. Let's have a look at another one. Definitely a cute little slug. Definitely a big fan. So, that one was done by Leaf. Leaf did a great job with that. So, next up, we have got another one. This one is done by Leaf and Jen this time. So, this is the red-eyed crocodile skink. Another cool little guy. So, let's find one exhibit camera. Look at this little guy. Where's another? Oh, no, you're not in the light. We'll find one that's in the light. There we are. Let's look at this little guy. This little goober. I like this little guy. Maybe the next one. That's probably a little bit better. I like this one. I like his pose. He's a strong pose. So, red-eyed crocodile skinks, or Tropilotus grandis, are a species of skink. They're actually quite common in the pet trade and are endemic to New Guinea, where they live in tropical rainforest habitats, and was first described by Nelly Geroge in 1909. So in terms of the behavior, they're actually one of the few skinks that actually vocalize when in distress, and when startled, they tend to freeze and known to play dead even when handled. And in terms of reproduction, the male red-eyed crocodile skink can be identified by its white paws on its feet, and females actually have one working ovary, so they only lay one egg at a time. And she'll often curl around the egg and actually aggressively defend it when she perceives a threat. And then if recovered, she will cover it back up, and male skinks will battle with females. They're also, as I mentioned, quite common in the reptile pet trade and have as well. They're very much one of those more visual pets, so you kind of put them in a tank, make sure it's nice for them, make sure it meets all their needs, and kind of just leaves them alone. And they like climbing branches and all that stuff. In terms of temperature, they do like it quite warm. They like it quite humid as well. They do like some UVB as well, and they don't much diggers, but they're insectivores, so typically feed on small insects that they can find. In captivity, you'll feed them like small mealworms, crickets, small roaches, and things like that. Yeah, really, really cool little guys. I believe Jen actually has one. I remember Leaf mentioning this one in his video. Has one herself, which is really, really cool. I can't get them where I live because we don't have that much in terms of exotics. But still really, really cool animal. Definitely love this little skink. Definitely cool little guy. Love them. Really, really cool little animal. So, yeah, next up, we're going to be moving on. So that was done by Leaf and Jen. Next up, we've got some bigger animals. We're going to have a look at some snakes. So we've got here the rainbow boa done by Leaf and Nick. So let's have a look at these little guys. Let's see if we can find one that's in the light. This one's in the light. Probably a good way to look at it. Look at this cool little guy. So the rainbow boa is a species of boa endemic to Central and South America. And they're semi-arboreal. So as I mentioned, they're kind of found within Lower Central America and further into South America. They can be found in the Andes and reach down to northern Argentina, where they typically prefer habitats like woodlands and rainforests, but they can actually be observed in open savannas. And there's believed to be about 5 subspecies known, including the dominant. And what really gets them the name the rainbow boa is because they have an iridescent sheen to them. Where they get their sheen, it's like, oh, they kind of look like the rainbow, which is very interesting. So in terms of mating habits, rainbow boa sexes have different ages where they can mate. Females should be about 2 to 4 years old when they mate, and males should be a minimum of about 2.5 years old. Females need to be the correct size, otherwise they'll have complications during and after birth. And males can mate with multiple females, which can be beneficial for reptile breeding. And in terms of eating habits, they generally go without feeding during the mating season, the males will, but the females will eat smaller portions in order to decrease the probability of birthing. It should be fed in captivity smaller things before you do that. And in terms of captivity, the most common type of boa found in the pet trade is the Brazilian rainbow boa, because during the 1980s and the early 1990s, they were exported to Suriname. However, far fewer are exported these days, and most of them are captive bred, which is a very good thing. We prefer captive bred. And with good care, rainbow boas can live up to 20 or 30 years in captivity. So that's pretty interesting as well. And as I mentioned, there's about 5 different subspecies. There's the Brazilian, Peruvian, Central Highlands. There's a few depending on where you are. And in terms of its appearance, you can see they're renowned for their appearance. Well, that's why reptile and nature enthusiasts like them so much. Their iridescent colors is where they kind of get their colors. They can have wide range of hues, so like deep reds, orange, yellows, and all sorts of sheens. And due to their vibrant colors, in addition to their vibrant colors, they actually have unique pale scale patterns. And these patterns can actually vary between individuals, or mainly species to species. With some rainbow boas have distinct saddle-shaped markings along their bodies, while others have speckles. So there's a lot of variation within there, which is actually really, really cool. But in terms of that, they're not too different from other boas. They do like climbing around a little bit. They're not very much too different in terms of other boas other than that sheen. Very, very cool animals, though. Definitely love these guys. Love a rainbow boa. Definitely has come out rather nicely. I think we might actually have a look. Let's see what we've got in Zoopedia. These guys. It's not too much. You can see their range. Woodlands, there's in the middle of the night. Semi-arboreal, so like climbing, as I mentioned. And the most common type, yeah, that's pretty much all the information I went through. But yeah, really, really cool. Like climbing, semi-arboreal, very similar to a lot of other types of boas in its kind of size. But yeah, really, really awesome animals. Done by Leaf and Nick. Next one was also done by Leaf and Nick. We've got everyone's favorite biggest snake in the world. We all love these big guys. So this is the green anaconda. So really, really big animal. So the green anaconda, which is also known as the giant anaconda or the common anaconda or the common water boa, they are a large boa species that can be found in South America and the Caribbean island of Trinidad. And they kind of get their claim to fame because they're the heaviest and largest and the second longest. The only snake that's longer is the reticulated python in the world. And there's no subspecies, and they're a constrictor. So the term anaconda actually refers to, often referred to this species, but it has been used to refer to other ones within the genus, like yellow anacondas. So yeah, as I carry on, they're the world's heaviest snake and one of the longest snakes. They're believed to reach up about 5.2 meters, about 17 feet long. With most typical specimens getting about 5 meters or about 16 feet long with adult females, and a mean length about 4.6, about 15 feet. While females are typically much larger than the males. Males on average get about 3 meters or about 9 feet 10 inches. And weights have been less studied for these guys, but they have been estimated to get between 30 to 80 kilograms or about 66 to 176 pounds for a typical adult. And they are the largest native snake to the Americas and the heaviest in the world. They are second only to the reticulated python, as I mentioned, in length, but they are still far bulkier. So if you have a anaconda and a reticulated python next to each other at the same length, the anaconda is going to be heavier. So 5 meter long python or 5 meter long anaconda, green anaconda, is comparable in weight to that of a 7 meter or 24 feet long reticulated python. And there has been lots of reports of anacondas 11 to 12 meters, like Titanoboa sized. But a lot of them they've never been caught at this length, so it's kind of people just saying, it's kind of a bit of hearsay, there's not much evidence, but people say 11, 12 meters, big scary one, it's like people saying all that stuff. But yeah, there was Titanoboa that may have got that big, but that's actually, we have evidence for Titanoboa get that big. But the longest and heaviest validated specimen that has been validated, that was found in a sample size of more than 1,000 anacondas, was a female that was about 5.21 meters long, or about 17 feet 1 inch, and weighed about 97 kilograms, or about 214 pounds and 15 ounces. And that's kind of the longest one that's been verified. But there has been there was a specimen that was claimed to have been 5.9 meters, 90 feet long, and about 163 kilograms, or 359 pounds, but we really don't know. It's quite difficult to get the size because of the capturing as well. Skins can stretch. A lot of them are just dubious claims, things like that. So the most empirically biggest anaconda, as you can see, is kind of around the 5 to 5.5, about a little over 5 meters and just under 100 kilograms. It's reasonable to say, I think. But you can see they're very interesting patterns. So the color pattern, you can see the green anaconda. That's where they get their green colors. And they have like olive green pattern with these black blotches around their body with a little bit of yellow and orange-yellow striping as well. And their heads are set high on the head as they're great swimmers. And they actually, like other snakes, they can open up their jaws. They don't dislocate their jaws. They actually are able to kind of like not unhinge their jaws. They're able to kind of stretch out their mandible together to be able to grab a bigger prey and not download it and swallow it, which is quite cool. So historical records, I've already mentioned. Kind of there's some different claims. It's very much he said, she said. But the largest one we can clarify is about just over 5 meters and just under 100 kilograms. Though there is probably bigger ones out there. It's kind of one of those things that because it's so infamous, there's people claiming all these things. So it's very hard to get to the truth. Be a really, really cool animal. In terms of distribution, they're found in South America. They range from Colombia and Venezuela all the way down to northern Paraguay. They can be found in Trinidad, Brazil, Ecuador, places like that. And in April 2019, April 29th, 2021, they were added to Florida's list of prohibitive non-natives. And as of August 2023, there's been 11 green anacondas verified in the wild of Australia, not of Florida, or Australia. And they're believed to be living at the Everglades, but there's not very many of them, luckily. Not like the Burmese pythons and the African rock pythons. But in terms of their habitat, they tend to prefer swamps and marshy lagoons and slow-moving streams and rivers. They tend to be much more semi-aquatic in the tropical rainforests and seasonal flood savannas. They're quite cumbersome on land, but they're quite sneaky in water, so they tend to prefer. That's why they have their eyes at the top of the head to allow them to swim around and find prey. Let's have a look at different things while we talk about them. A real-life anaconda could probably not do this, but still looks cool regardless. So there's a big guy. I'll have a look at you. I love anacondas. Okay, so in terms of their behavior, they're typically nocturnal and aquatic, so they can float underwater with their eyes are those located on top of the head to be able to find prey. When prey passes next to water to drink, they'll strike, and then they'll constrict it. They'll grab it with their mouth and then kind of constrict it with their bodies, very similar to a lot of other pythons and boas, and constrict it to suffocate or kind of increase the blood pressure. There's a lot of debate whether what the crushing actually does, but it could do multiple things, like restrict the airflow, but also like kind of increase blood pressure to kind of make you explode on the inside. So it really depends on who you ask. So these guys are apex predators in their ecosystem. They pretty much on that seafood diet. They'll seafood, they eat it. They feed on a wide variety of fish, amphibians, birds, and mammals and reptiles. Large anacondas will feed on tapirs, deers, capybaras, jaguars, and caimans, but that can be very rare. Typical prey includes lots of caimans, capybaras, agoutis, peccaries, tapirs, snakes, smaller snakes, iguanas, turtles. So they pretty much just eat whatever they can get their mouths around. Typically, it's bigger snakes will eat bigger things. So a young baby anaconda will not go for capybaras, but they eat kind of what they can fit for their size. So the large prey is often really done, but can be taken by bigger anacondas. Though typically they try to avoid that. So they don't go for prey that's way too big for them because that can cause injury, and that's why it's considered rare. Though the risk is reduced when they can drown their prey, so that's why they maybe actually go for bigger animals. Some will also feed on carrion as well, and large anacondas, if they have a big meal, they go for weeks or even months without food because of their slow ectothermic metabolism. It's interesting as well. And there have many reports of anacondas feeding on humans, but there's a little evidence of this. We don't know. As the movie Anaconda does not show evidence of them actually, but we just don't have much evidence of them actually eating people. It's actually very difficult for a lot of large snakes to eat people because of our shoulders, because it's very hard for them to stretch over our head and then our shoulders. And cannibalism has been reported, mostly larger females eating smaller males. And this is partly, actually part of the size of the great sexual dimorphism actually the females need for food to sustain them. So the reason the females are bigger because they need more food to sustain being pregnant and all that. So typically, in terms of reproduction, they are solitary until the mating season, which occurs during the rainy season, usually April or May. The female will produce pheromones and then the males will follow her. And then the males will kind of form a breeding ball with like up to 12 males kind of climbing on around her trying to mate with her. And they can stay in this position for about 2 to 4 weeks. And the males will wrestle in slow motion to try and mate with her. And during mating, the males will use their spur to arouse the female and all that. You do that stuff, they'll stimulate her and all that. And try to get her to copulate. And typically the strongest and largest males wins. But the female may actually choose another if they are much larger and stronger. And courtship all pretty much happens only in the water. So mating, after mating, the baby's obviously, she's pregnant, and the gestation period lasts about 6 to 7 months, and they are ovoviviparous, which means females will give birth to live young, and these litters will usually consist of 20 to 40 offspring, but many as 100 can be produced, and after giving birth, the female actually may lose half of her weight. And neonates are around 70 to 80 centimeters, or just over 2 feet long, and receive no parental care. So basically, they're born and sent out into the world. And because of their small size, they can fall under prey to other animals, but they survive. They will become sexually mature in a few years, and then grow muscle after that. So that's part of the reason. It's kind of like sea turtles, so they have so many babies. These guys will have a few babies. Most of them will die, but a few will grow up to be adults, anacondas someday, and breed again, which is interesting. And one, they've actually been known to be give birth through parthenogenesis. So basically, they just clone themselves. They don't need a male around. It has been observed in 2014. One gave birth to 3 young through parthenogenesis. And in terms of longevity, they can live for about 10 years in the wild, but in captivity, they can live for 30 years or more. In 2023, the Guinness World Records of the oldest living snake is actually a green anaconda that is aged 37 years, 113 days, is verified as 4th of May 2021. So I think she's still alive. She's probably about 40 years old now and lives in Johannesburg, South Africa, in a zoo, to clarify. And because they're anacondas, they've often been portrayed in horror and literature of swallowing people, and these traits have been attributed to other species like Burmese and reticulated pythons, but there's no variable evidence of them being able to actually kill and eat people. Though they could probably kill someone, they probably can't eat people. And there's believed to be some large specimens that are isolated, but it's kind of like those things. And also inspired movies like Anaconda and things like that. But yeah, really, really cool animal. Definitely love a green anaconda. Definitely awesome. I love this one sitting here. Huge animals. Definitely a friend. Okay, so that is all the exhibit animals done. Leaf and Nick, of course, did a wonderful job with that. Next one, by Great Cake Mods, we have got the blue-throated macaw. So another really cool one. So the blue-throated macaw, also called the Canidae macaw or the Wagler's macaw. These are a macaw endemic to a small area in north-central Bolivia, as the last name Monos. And in 2014, they was designated as a natural primate of Bolivia. And until 2010, they were actually native peoples actually hunted them and used for their neck dresses for things like that. But they are sadly critically endangered, as I'll get into. So recent populations and range estimates actually suggest there's less than 208 to 303 adults remaining in the wild, and this demise is believed to be brought by nesting competition, their small native range, hunting, capturing for the pet trade, and this is why they are considered critically endangered. So in terms of description, they get about 85 centimeters long, that includes the tail feathers, and have a wingspan of about 90 centimeters. They typically weigh between 900 to 1100 grams, or just under to just over a kilogram. And there's not really much sexual dimorphism between them. However, males tend to be, on average, a little bit bigger than the females, and they tend to be a little bit bigger, with the females on average reaching about 750 kilograms, the males being about 950. You can see they're very similar to the blue and gold macaw, but there are some differences. They've got that blue and gold color, but the main difference is, as you can see, they've got the blue around their throat, which is on the lower cheek and throat, which gives them their name. but they still have that kind of blue and gold color that a lot of... I think we'll have a look at a different one. That these macaws have. Blue and gold macaws. They're related to them. The adults, if you can see, have yellow irises, and the babies' ones are brown. They're going to change as they age. They've got this very big beak that they're able to break apart things like most other parrots can. Very, very cool, large black bill. And you can see they've got those horizontal stripes of brew feathers that are actually unique to every macaw, and they can actually be used to identify individuals, which is good for their conservation. So really, really awesome. So as I mentioned, I can't speak properly. This distribution habitat, as I mentioned, they only live in Bolivia. Nesting on the islas of palm trees is forest-dwelling bird. They are one of the rarest parrots in the world, sadly. And they're inhabited by the two populations, one by northern Trinidad and one south of Trinidad, where they like landscapes. They like complex landscapes of grasslands and marshes and forests and things like that. They're most frequently found in monogamous pairs, but they can be found in flocks of about 7 to 9. And there's one large group that's about 70 or so that nest together. It is not known if macaws will pair up with another male if they die. And their main mode of locomotion is flying, but they're able to climb using their feet. They're quite adept at climbing with their zygodactyl feet. They have 2 toes going forward, 2 going backward. That allows them to climb. So they're quite adept climbers. It allows them to climb along branches and things like that. Their main mode of locomotion is flying, and they're active during the day and usually stay in one general area, and they communicate through a lot of sounds. They're very vocal birds, like most macaws and stuff. They're not quite as adept at learning human speech as like African greys, but they can learn a few words, but they're very vocal as well, so it's quite cool. And in terms of feeding, they do not eat seeds or nuts in the same way other macaw species do, which is interesting. So they primarily eat fruit from large palms, which is interesting, and they eat the mesocarpon like ripe fruit, and they've been observed drinking the liquids of very immature fruit. So much more frutivores than a lot of other macaws. And typically for breeding, they typically will breed once a year, but if the eggs or nesting is lost, they may produce a second clutch. We'll have a look at the baby. Look at this cute little baby. So a clutch will typically consist of about 1 to 3 eggs, and they'll be incubated for about 26 days. Nestlings have a mass of approximately 18 grams and hatch and fledge at about 13 to 14 weeks. And the young macaws are still fully dependent on their parents for food until they fledge and they're able to take care of themselves. Even after this occurs, the babies will hang out with their parents for about a year. And during this time, their parents will skip an entire breeding season, and they reach sexual maturity at about 5 years of age. And in terms of their nesting, they tend to like to nest in palm trees, most often the Eleta phallotica, that's the species they like, and they'll nest on other palm species as well. Dead palms are preferred as they like hollowed out palms. And nesting pairs of blue-throated macaws do not stay with one nest during the breeding season, so they try to find as many. They use different nesting sites each year. In the wild, they will compete for these nesting holes with lots of other species of like green-winged macaws, scarlet macaws, blue and yellow macaws, woodpeckers, toucans, bees, barn owls, and bats. And this is actually a big issue with like deforestation. So the number of suitable trees to make nests in increases the competition. So that is part of the reason why they can become endangered, which is a little bit of a sad thing, but we'll get into that. So as I mentioned, they are one of the rarest. They have a very small population and are on the verge of extinction. They are critically endangered. So trapping of them is illegal, and the wild population was thought to be in the 1980s about 500 to 1,000, but the population has most recently increased between like 200 to 300, which is very, very dire signs. But there has been small increases, which is good. So their numbers are going up, and lots of help as well, protections by the governments, health checks, and making sure that there's enough nest boxes for the parrots to go around. So there's also reserves as well. They've also banned the hunting of their feathers so they can help recover, and they are protected by the Endangered Species Act, which is cool. But they are relatively easy to find in captivity, and the captive population is estimated to be about 1,100 individuals, which is sadly more than the wild. They can be found in many zoos around the world, and they have been hybridized with other species of macaws. And there have been several breeding and conservation schemes and zoos to help protect the species and try to protect them. As I mentioned, the wild palm groves have been protected for these guys. They're early nesters and things like that. And they are sometimes, although uncommonly kept as companion parrots, they're quite affectionate birds as pets. But being a large parrot, they do have a lot of. They can break a lot of things. They are quite big. They need other parrots because they're very social. Uh, so it's one of those things that you got to be careful. And they can live a long time. They can live well over 50 years of captivity, like most other species of parrots or other species of macaws. And yeah, just really, really cool. Great. It's nice to see some, even though they're sadly very endangered, critically endangered even, but it's nice to see that their numbers are going up and there's lots of people willing to help them, and even zoos are helping them as well. A great example of how zoos can help species, and even aviculture, or people keeping them in captivity just as pets can help the species. Because I imagine some may be potentially used for genetic like rescue if necessary. So yeah, that was done by Great Cake Mods, who's really been putting out a lot of mods recently that are like, wow. I'll get into those. There's one coming up soon and another part that's got like my favorite animal of all times. You guys will probably know that. What's going on with this animal here? We won't worry about that. So next up, we have got by Lorby, we have got the wood stork. Very, very cool animal. So the wood stork, they're a large American wading bird, the type of stork, and the only member of stork to breed in North America. They're also formerly known as the wood ibis, though they're not related to ibis. So in terms of their habitat, they can be found in like subtropical and tropical habitats in the Americas, including the Caribbean. And in South America, there's resident, but they can disperse up to Florida and North America, which is quite interesting. In terms of restriction, they're quite a large bird. They get about 83 to 115 centimeters tall and have a wingspan about 140 to 180 centimeters, or about 55 to 71 inches. And the males will typically weigh between 2.5 to 3.5 kilograms, or 5 to 7 pounds, with a mean weight of about 2.7 kilograms, or about 6 pounds, with the females weighing about 20 to 28 kilograms, 2.8 kilograms, or 4 to 6 pounds, with the average weight of 2.2. And this puts their mean about 2.6 kilograms. So the head and neck, as you can see, is completely bare, and they have a scaly skin that is dark grey, and they've got the down-turned beak as well. And most of their plumage is mostly white, except for some dark feathers, like primaries and secondaries, that have some iridescence to them. And newly hatched chicks are covered in a grey down, which you can kind of see on here. Let's see if we can find a baby. This is one of the babies, I think. Oh, wait, it's the baby. There should be babies in here. We'll have a look at young adult. But yeah, typically they have like a round to them, which is interesting, and they can have a yellow bill. So in terms of their habitat, they're subtropical and tropical birds that breed in much of South America and Central America to the Caribbean. And the only stork that breeds in North America, where they can be found in the Carolinas, Florida, and Georgia. And South America, they're much more common. They can be found to northern Argentina, where they live in all sorts of tropical and subtropical wetland habitats. And they're functional. So they basically just like a lot of water, like most storks. And nests of trees, they are over water as well, so they like nesting in trees. They like mangrove forests. And to feed, they use freshwater marshes with lots of mangrove trees and also brackish water as well. In terms of breeding, they're a resident breeder of like lowland wetlands with trees. They like to make their nests in trees. They also nest colonially, and there can be up to 25 nests in one tree. And the height of these nests can be variable, but they can be quite big. They can get about 2.5 meters tall, up to 6.5 meters tall in taller mangrove trees. And they can often, in taller trees, they can nest up to 20 meters or 24 meters above the ground. And the nest itself is built by the male from sticks and twigs from the surrounding area. And they can get quite big. They can get about a meter diameter. The central green area can be an average about 28 centimeters. And they usually have quite a big one. And the frequency also decreases decreases after the eggs hatch. So they get small after hatch just because, things naturally come off. The wood storks without a nest will actually occasionally take the nests of other storks, and they may be from more than one bird, and the eggs are thrown out and kind of given to a new one, which is also interesting. And breeding itself actually is initiated by a drop in water level with an increased density of fish, so that kind of like triggers them to start breeding. This typically can occur from November to August, and after breeding takes about 4 months to complete. The birds will lay a clutch of about 3 to 5 cream-coloured eggs that are about 68 to 46 centimeters or millimeters, or about 2.7 to 1.8 inches in size. And then they're usually laid 1 or 2 days apart and incubated for about 27 to 32 days by both sexes. That incubation period starts with their first egg is laid, and during that first week, they do not move far, except to forage occasionally, so they will swap and take turns, unlike a lot of the birds. They typically will hatch in order, where they're laid with intervals between each baby. So typically, they will hatch, that's called attritional, so they're unable to move much when they're babies, and they're brooded for their first week and covered when it's raining. They're not left alone until at least 3 weeks at their age, with one parent foraging and the other watching their chick. They will typically, once they're about 3 weeks old, they will be big enough to stay and protect the nest, and they will fledge at about 60 to 65 days and reach sexual maturity at about 4 years of age. Though they usually do not successfully fledge chicks until their 5th year of age. And they're actually quite successful, so hatching rate can be about 62%, though in some colonies they can have high as 89 to 90%. Though animals like raccoons or kakaras can kind of take eggs and chicks, so they're typically quite protective of them. Though in terms of feeding, they feed on mostly fish, but supplement it with insects. So during the wet season, fish makes up about half their diets, crab making up the other 30%, and insects and frogs making the rest. So they're pretty generous in that regard. They feed similar to other storks that kind of wait around the water and attack them, but they tend to hunt by themselves. They tend to prefer high density as well. And both parents will feed the chicks by regurgitating into their mouths until they're 45 days old, and then they'll often take them out to hunt. And very interesting is they fly as well. They use two different techniques. When it's not sufficiently water or clear, they actually will stroke, flapping their wings and gliding for short periods, and they will glide much more when it's kind of warmer and clear, as they're able to ride thermals, very similar to like condors and vultures and things like that, which is cool as well. In terms of predators and predators, as I mentioned, raccoons, vultures, and hawks can be big predators of the eggs, but adults tend to be all right. And in terms of their status, they are considered least concerned because they have a large range, but they are considered threatened in the United States. This is a recovery from a former status of endangered, which is held by 1984 to 2014 as a decline. So they have been doing better in that regard. Generally, threats to these guys is draining of wetlands and climate change as well. So tourists have been also a big disturbance as well, which has caused the decrease, so like disturbing them and kind of scaring them off. Everglades drainage systems have caused water fluctuations that have kind of shifted the time of nestings and decreased population. So things like that can affect them, but because they've got such a wide population and such a large variety of habitats they live in, they are doing okay, though they have declined a bit in North America. So they are doing all right. Also, like habitat degradation and things like that, especially in wetlands, would affect these guys. So yeah, that was done by Lorby. And last up, we've got by Genoa Pizza and... have I got... Oh, no, I won't worry about that. So we've got the Scottish Wildcat. This was done by Gaboy and Genoa Pizza. So this is a population of the European wildcat that lives, of course, in Scotland. They were once widely distributed across Great Britain, but their population has decreased a lot during the 20th century because of habitat destruction and persecution, and they're now only limited to the northern and eastern parts of Scotland. So, in terms of camera trapping surveys, they found to be about between 2010 and 2030 revealed wildcats live in like wetland forests and things like that, where the domestic cats kind of being found in grasslands. So in terms of their taxonomy, they were originally considered their own species. They were proposed, but then when they were kind of lumped, they're a subspecies of the European wildcat, as they would have bred with other wildcat populations in Europe during the Ice Age when Doggerland was exposed. So they're really only there, just isolated slightly. The subspecies name is Felis severus, so they consider the dominant. So recent genetic evidence suggests there's been a lot of genetic research into these guys. They became isolated from the continental population about 7,000 to 9,000 years ago because of the sea rise levels and the last glacial maximum. And they have been considered pretty much a subspecies. Some even doubt it's a subspecies. They're just kind of considered their own population of European wildcat that live in the UK. And they get the nickname the Scottish wildcat or the Scottish tiger just as a kind of cool nickname. So in terms of the characteristics, their head to body length ranges about 578 to 636 millimeters, or about 22 to 25 inches, or about 305 to 355 millimeters, or 12 to 14 inch tails for the females. Males are a little bit bigger, about a little bit smaller. Females a little bit smaller, about 504 to 572 millimeters, or 19 to 22 inches, with an 11 to 13 inch, or about 280 or 28 to 31 centimeter tail as well. So males are typically bigger. They get about between 3 to 7 kilograms, or 8 to 16 pounds, and females get about 2 to 4 kilograms, or about 5 to 10 pounds, which is interesting. And you can see they've got that very much tabby look to them, very much like a tabby cat. Strong tabby pattern with a ring tail with a black tip. They differ a lot in stripes from domestic cats and in the average of spots as well. They are much heavier than domestic cats as well. They have much longer limbs, more robust body, and they have a larger body size than domestic cats, but also have a shorter gastrointestinal tract, which is interesting as well. So the Scottish wildcat itself would have been present in Britain during the early Holocene, where the British Isles was connected to Europe through Doggerland, and they're once common throughout all of Great Britain. They went locally extinct in southern England in about 16th century. I think the issue is these guys grew up. Yeah, I forgot to turn the thing off, so we don't have any kitties, I don't think, which is a little bit sad. I forgot that, because the kitties were very cute. Oh, they must have grown up. Oh, that's technical difficulties for you. I apologize. We won't see baby Scottish cats today, so no one knows, we maybe might do. So, take you. Who knows, we might actually try. Alright, we'll carry on. We'll see what happens. So, as I mentioned, mid-19th century, they ranged down to Wales, and up to 1915, they were pretty much restricted to northwestern Scotland. And due to the declining number of gamekeepers after World War II, their population actually increased again, and then urbanization has kind of reduced the ability to migrate and kind of figure out everything. Its current distribution lives around like the Camergons, glens. They prefer like wooded habitats, but also avoid hair that grows scrub as well. So, in between March of 1995 and April 1997, there was about 31 Scottish wildcats that were radio tagged, and it seems they tend to be most active by night and active decrease with low bird light and windy weather. And home of the male wildcats overlap with home ranges of one or more females, where female ranges really overlap. Adult males maintain larger territories than juveniles, and they mark and defend their home using scent marking as well. And their homes ranges kind of range between 2.44 to 3.8 kilometers, so between just under a mile to 1.4 miles. And the main prey of these guys includes European rabbits and field voles, but they also be fed on lots of mice and things and rabbits. They really like that. So let's see if they will breed for us. Oh. Or did I just put the wrong ones in there? Let me just swap them again. Sorry, technical difficulties. Carry on. Okay. Carry on. So male Scottish wildcats will reach sexual maturity about 10 months of age, and the females at age less than 12 months. The female have an estrus in early March, and then the litter will born early May after gestation period of about 63 to 68 days. And another estrus will occur in 1 month later. Second litter will be born in August. Kittens will typically open their eyes about 10 to 13 days old, and their eyes are initially blue and change to green at about 7 weeks of age. In the wild, typically, wild mating will occur from January to March, and litter sizes vary from like 1 to 8 kittens, which a mean litter is about 4 young, and females really give birth in the winter. Kittens are typically born in gens, where they're hidden by bush piles, things like that, and they begin to learn how to hunt at about 10 to 12 weeks of age, and are fully weaned from their mother at about 14 weeks. And they leave their mother about 6 months of age, with kitten mortality during the winter at about 1975, 1978 is high, when mostly starved. Captive Scottish wildcats live for about 15 years, but their lifespan is much shorter in the wild, sadly due to road accidents and also disease transmission from feral domestics. So we're going to talk about some of the issues that these little guys face. So lots of threats include habitat loss, domestic cats interbreeding and spreading diseases, and being hunted as vermin. Luckily, it's not too big these days. They're often killed, but to protect game bird species, so they're considered venom, which is not very good. Hybridization with outdoor roaming cats is actually regarded as a pretty big threat, and it's likely that all Scottish wild cats today do have some sort of domestic cat ancestry, just because of people having cats. Unvaccinated and infected domestic cats actually transmit lethal diseases to Scottish wild cats, such as feline catavirus, female coronavirus, female leukemia virus, and all sorts of virus that can kill cats, which is very sad. And there was also extended controversy of Swedish energy kind of wildcats, the forest and be wildcat wonderland, and the states that they wanted to get rid of that, and which was a habitat for, of course, these guys. Let's see. Oh, they're elderly. Oh. So we won't have any kittens today, which sucks, but that's okay. In terms of their conservation, the Scottish wildcat was protected in 1981 by the United Kingdom's Wildlife and Countryside Act, but feral cats can be killed throughout the year, though. There's lots of conservation work to be going into these guys. So in the wild, there has been neutering feral cats and euthanizing diseased feral cats to prevent the spread of the population as well. Are they all gone? Oh, this is a bit of a mess up. Let's see if we can find the other one in here. We'll have a look at you, Zara. So they were developed. The Scottish Wildcat Conservation Action Plan was developed by the Scottish Wildcat Conservation Action Group, which set all the priorities and things like that, and where they obviously mention neuter feral cats and get rid of feral cats. But in 2014, they've set up areas to try and that have been considered highly likelihood of conservation success, where they've designated sanctuaries and things like that. And there's been a lot of captivity. Work in captivity as well, as I'll get into, but they've actually not considered a risk of extinction anymore in Scotland because there's been a lot of conservation work. So there's the very good conservation success story, especially in the UK. So in terms of captive breeding, there has been a captive breeding program established for Scottish wildcats, and that has been established by the Scottish Wildcat Conservation Action Plan, where wild-caught individuals will actually try to pass genetics and morphological tests to be considered wildcats with less than 5% hybridization, to try and find the most purest ones. And there's quite a few zoos, including Chester Zoo, Highland Wildlife Park, Aldead Wilderness Reserve, that will breed them and try and make sure that they are released into the wild as well. So this captive breeding program has actually drawn criticism and by animal rights organizations, which states the breeding program has little to do with conservation, having to do with stock in the cages, which is silly, but that's animal rights people being animal rights people. 6 kittens were actually born in Highland Park in 2015. In 2016, there's been about 15 in the Highland Wildland Park. And there have been actually releases beginning in 2024 and 2023. There has been some releases. 22 cats in early June of 2023, and now a further 40 between 2024 and 2025. So there is some conservation groups, which is great. And there have been something that's quite big in culture as well. The Scottish wildcat is typically an icon of the Scottish wilderness, which is interesting as well. And they're actually celebrating, there's been celebrated a lot, and there's been documentaries talking about the plights of these guys, which is really, really sad. But yeah, it's a little bit sad that we don't have kittens right now. I'm very sorry about that. I thought I put my settings onto disable animal growing up, so we just missed out on some cute kittens, but they're kittens of Scottish. You can look up pictures of Scottish wildcat kittens. They're very, very cute, and the ones in the game are very, very cute as well. They're just like little cute ones of the adults. We all know what kittens look like, and they're bloody adorable. So yeah, sorry about that, but I feel like I did a great job with this episode today. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified if I upload anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.